when it comes to buying online, are South Africans very concerned about security?
I think they are, but I think it's. I don't think it's that they are concerned. I think the perception is that it's all about that they're concerned about security. I think it's the thing is more that they have there's a sort of an inherent lack of trust in new things immediately, and I think that's and also most internet companies have done a particularly bad job of explaining what you're doing, and therefore people have just built up this barrier to actually entering their details online, and they're worried, and then payment providers throw in an extra SMS step and things like that. That for the average consumer, I mean, they're completely confused by all these weird developments in how to pay online, which is totally unnatural, not the same as you would do at the shop with cash. And I think the second part of it is that South Africans sort of got the internet as a copy and paste from America and Western Europe, and like that experience is tailored to a completely different market with completely different sort of context, and where these services were almost easily understood. Whereas for us, it's more, wow, shucks, do I now? Oh, so I can enter my credit card details and then it just magically takes the money away. I mean, that's underestimated how much lack of context was the problem.
Yeah, I also think the chief concern here is uncertainty or misunderstanding, as you say. So the consumer doesn't feel comfortable with the technology more than they feel scared. Imagine, for example, today if somebody had to invent cash, and you have to explain to somebody, we'll give you a lot of colored piece of paper, you carry it with you all the time, and anyone can take it from you and then it's theirs. I mean, there's no way that would ever get approved in the world. And yet we've done this for thousands of years, but we fundamentally understand it. It's an extremely simple concept. I have a physical thing and I give it to you and now it's yours. That is pretty simple to understand. Because these solutions are designed by engineers and by programmers, we built in an enormous amount of extra security that makes it much, much safer than carrying around valuable stuff with you. But the average customer doesn't understand what's going on there. They don't know what a PIN is and an OTP and a password and a security certificate and all of these things. And so essentially what you're asking them to do is to trust you. You're not asking them to trust the product, you're asking them to trust you. And that is a hard thing.
That's why they're paying the big bucks.
I think to a lot of, well, maybe a lot of people, having the cash in your hand and being able to see it and feel it and guard it yourself is less scary than having something happen out in cyberspace and then they have no control over that, I think people think.
Look, and we also have to be honest about it. A lot of mistakes were made before. I mean, money was lost, experiences were horrible. How many times have you tried to do a transaction, whether money one or just anything else on the internet, and it went wrong and it said error, and now what do I do now? Where's the human being that I speak to that maybe sits in a different country? So I don't think we must ignore how important this is, and also have sympathy with and empathy with the user, saying, you know, we recognize this is a scary experience, but let's as an industry, let's put in place those safeguards so that it becomes something that is no longer scary, because people understand who to trust and how to trust it.
No, I agree, and the other thing that's it's also funny is that by bias of recency, people would buy something online and maybe have a coffee in a coffee shop in the same day, and then the next day their credit card details have been compromised, and someone has bought airtime or electricity using their credit cards, and they're like, oh shucks, must be the internet site, right? Because so I entered my number and so I gave it away. So it must be the internet site, whereas it was probably the waiter at the coffee shop that just wrote down the numbers because they had the physical card, and that's just a perfect sort of example of why I also agree with Kobus, and that people have this inherent thing. We know how to protect our own things, and as soon as we give it away and we don't see it, then that's becomes scary.
Are there any extra steps people can do to make sure that their information is secure and safe, to give them a little bit more confidence when it comes to buying online?
Look, I think the banks in South Africa are actually doing a really great job at educating customers in terms of what they should and shouldn't do. And we also must recognize that there are a lot of scary things going on out there. There are syndicates trying to steal your details. There are people who try to take your money. In the same way that they exist in the real world today, and there are people trying to break into houses. This is a normal part of living on planet Earth today. So you have to take that responsibility, I think, as a consumer. Today, if you are literate, it means you also understand the basics about who should I give my card to, both in a physical context and online. It is simple things like not entering your internet banking password on sites that you don't recognize, not falling for all those scam SMSs you're getting. So I think a large part of this is solved by a bit of education, in the same way that don't walk around with 20,000 Rand cash in your hand on the street. In that same way, don't click on any random SMS you get and type in your internet banking password. It was new 20 years ago and scary and difficult to understand, but I think it's becoming more and more normal. And I think we all have that responsibility to educate each other and act responsibly.
And something that that ties into this that we really want to accomplish at OLX is we believe that if people know each other better, there's a much higher chance that they would trade with each other. I think that's something that's uniquely South African and African in the way that we are a more personal continent. We like to know who we talk to and who we are friends with and what school they went to. And enabling that sort of personal trade, I think will take away a lot of the sort of the let's call it unnecessary fears, because then people know, well, if you defraud me, then I can go to your house and being quite a retributive society, probably kill you, and by taking away that, it's I mean that's what we want to achieve.